suckered him into that push because they needed to make sure, absolutely sure, that whoever was going to be in this Attorney General's race was their crony. Without any doubt, without any qualms, he would do their bidding. Right? And so that's the battle that we have today. That's what we have to face up and realize is going on in this office. And it is an absolutely critical step. Now, you know, I find that anytime you want a real lesson in humility, run for statewide office on a third-party ticket. Oh boy. Right? But, you know, again, when I look back, and I was a history major in college, and military history was one of the things that fascinated me the most. And what I find in military history, one of the greatest textbooks for military history is the Old Testament. Man, it is just packed with all kinds of great stuff for military history. There's one that really stands out in my mind. It's from Book of Judges, chapter 20. What's going on here is that the tribe of Benjamin is rebelling against the rest of the Israelis. And God tells the Israelis, go up and defeat the tribe of Benjamin. So they feel, all right, we're inspired. We've been told by God to do this. They go up against the tribe of Benjamin, and they get their butt kicked. Bad. I mean, it's ugly. It's a massacre. The tribe of Benjamin just falls the ground. So they fall back and they regroup, and they're like, God, you sure you want us to do this? What's going on here? And God says, no, 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 no. Go up against the tribe of Benjamin. All right. So they go up against the tribe of Benjamin a second time. They get their butts kicked again. Bad. Worse than before. Right? So they stumble back and they regroup. And they're thinking, we have wax in our ear? Did we miss the instruction here? What's going on? God says, no, go up against the tribe of Benjamin. But this time, right, the Israelis said, well, let's change up our tactics. Let's maybe try to do something a little different because we're really getting our butts handed to us here. Right? And so they do a feint. They feint a frontal attack. They draw out the tribe of Benjamin from their defensive positions. They then sneak a rear force in behind. They set fire to the city, right? And then when the tribe of Benjamin's confused because they see their city on fire, now they've got forces on both sides. They're confused, and now the Israelis crush the tribe of Benjamin. So it's changing of tactics. So those that think, oh, well, you know what, we've got to be stuck in this Republican-Democrat paradigm, let me ask, in the last 50 years, how's that been going for us?
Not very well. Worse and worse.
We've been pretty much getting our butts kicked, huh? I say let's change our tactics a little bit. Let's make it a little bit different. Now, in this particular race, we have a really unique opportunity, and here's how it shakes out. First of all, some of you might recall in 2009, there was a congressional race in New York where the Republican had a candidate by the name of Didi Scarfozo. Anybody remember that race? He was this ridiculous leftist Republican, big government, pro-abortion, anti-gun Republican that they had put forward. This fellow named Doug Hoffman from the Conservative Party of New York said, you know what? This is just so bad, this is so ridiculous, that candidate is so terrible, we're going to get in this race. And I got to tell you, he didn't win this race, but he came a whisker away from victory, and if the Tea Party groups had been as advanced in 2009 as they are today, he would have won that race. It was just, it's a growing movement. We have to understand that that growing movement is an aspect of what's going on. He was still a whisker away from winning that race. Well, I got to tell you, Mike DeWine and Didi Scarfozo have a lot in common. Right? Both of them just have no understanding of what the Second Amendment is all about. They just don't get it. And when our founding fathers, when they were looking at this idea of the Second Amendment, this wasn't for the thug in a ski mask. That's not what they were contemplating. They were thinking about the thug in a suit and tie in Washington. Those were the folks that's why the Second Amendment was designed. right? Because they knew that if a people feared their government, that's tyranny. But when the government fears their people, that's liberty. That's the genesis of freedom. Now, I'm a man of peace, and I truly believe that if we use our hearts and our minds and our pens, and we put in the same dedication that our founding fathers put in, because remember, they were putting their treasure and their lives and their businesses and their families on the line for liberty. If we put that same effort forward today, we don't need great masses to have victory here. No, we don't. We just need that kind of effort to be put forward, and we can win this race. Now, that doesn't stop me from keeping my FNFAO clean and stocking up on a lot of 308. But we've got to stay focused on a peaceful solution, because this can happen. When a small group of people is all it took in 1776, and that same small group, and that is all that's going to be necessary today. And I got to tell you, as I travel the state, I see the remnant. It's there, and it's dedicated, and it's ready to get active. Now, we're not quite all the way there yet. Who here can reflect upon the May 4th primary and think, I'm totally satisfied with what happened in the May 4th primary? No hands go up. Let's talk about that. You know, I find, I'd like to say as a lawyer, I've never lost in court. I'd be lying to you. I have lost in court. And I'll tell you, the times where I have lost in court, I've probably learned more from those instances, because it really makes me sit down and just absolutely agonize through every aspect of what went on, looking for how I could have improved and how I could have done better. So let's apply that to the May 4th primary. What we saw in large part, and there were some great candidates. Does anybody here ever have the opportunity to meet Sandy O'Brien, running for Secretary of State? Sandy's excellent, right? She would have made the most outstanding Secretary of State that this state has seen in a long, long, long time. Sandy was really a wonderful candidate, right? And I saw a lot of people saying, oh, we love Sandy, right? And they were Facebooking, hey, about Sandy O'Brien, and they were emailing their friends, and they were IMing, and they were MySpacing, right? And they were doing all these kinds of things. But when it was all said and done, it wasn't enough. And I got to tell you, that's not going to be enough. In 1776, if Ben Franklin said, well, I don't really want to give any money, I don't really want to get involved, but I'll send some emails, right? We'd still be part of the British Empire. It's going to take more than that. It's going to take sacrifice of money and effort and all that kind of stuff. Now again, it's not going to take a big sacrifice right now. We are very blessed by God. Even though all these awful things are going on in this country, the fact that we can still gather here today in this room and talk about the problem, the fact that you can go home and you still have a shotgun and a pistol and an assault rifle in your cupboard, that gives us great hope that we still have a relative amount of freedom, that we still have the opportunity to turn this thing around for our children. But again, the choice here today that we have to make is we're either going to live as slaves or we are going to fight for our freedom.